Wednesday, March 19th. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Allen,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler, Commissioner Crowley,
Present.
and Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
I'd like to welcome everyone here in the audience as well as everyone watching or listening at home. We will begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Pastor Terrence Robertson of Bethany Chapel Baptist Church.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, Pastor? Okay. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this gathering, for this day we can be here together. We just look around town, Lord, we can see the way you've blessed our community in many, many ways. Not only our faithful city employees, but also, Lord, just to drive around town and see how you blessed us in so many ways here. We give you thanks for that. And now as we look over this agenda and the items we're going to discuss pretty soon, we just ask for your direction and guidance. Give us clear minds and pure hearts, wisdom that comes from only you to make the right decision. We just commit this time to you in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Skidmore. Do we have any public comments registered today?
We have none registered.
Okay. We will skip item 7 as there's nothing under that section. We'll move on to item 8, which is the consent agenda, which includes minutes from March 5th, 2025 meeting, minutes from February 12th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting, February 2025 Finance Report, outside agency reports for February of 2025, and the agenda approval.
Motion to approve.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to item 9, the declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Seeing none, we will skip item 10 with nothing under that section. We'll move on to item 11A.
Review of KOWI Taxiway bid proposal.
We will review and consider bid proposals received for the KOWI Taxiway project, and City Manager Silcott and Brad Waller will be presenting on this.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, we have essentially 3 items that we can consider in one motion. So we wanted to delineate them for purposes of transparency and ease of tracking. However, we're presenting them in a single report. The airport taxiway is part of our 2025 adopted capital improvement program and is part of our 2017 airport master project program as well, our plan. And we recommend that you accept the base bid in the amount of $1,160,881 and make that contingent upon FAA concurrence and receipt of the authorized FAA grant to award add alternate number 1 bid submission in the amount of $2,219,602.25 to the contractor Amino Brothers Incorporated, and to authorize the city manager and other such agents of the city to submit and take all actions necessary to execute the documents in a reasonable judgment to submit and comply with the FAA regulations regarding the grant award and administration process. This has been identified as a critical infrastructure need as a structural evaluation of the taxiway concrete failed strength standards and required a full replacement. This constitutes an operational and safety risk if the continued degradation were to reach a point that it's currently on in some time without being actually addressed. This is part of our original airport infrastructure plan. It was originally anticipated to be essentially a paving overlay, a mill and overlay project, but with the test evaluation, it came back needing a reconstruction. And so it is actually a 95%, 5% For the base part, the commission's taken 2 previous actions specifically related to what we're considering today, and that's where you approve the selection of Alfred Benish and Company as our consultant and construction administration provider, and those occurred in July of '24 and January of this year. And we have our project engineer, Brad Waller from Benish here, and you don't have to stand back. You can come up. We have completed several items that were previously identified at our January 15th meeting. We did advertise the bid for phase 1 and the ad alternate. That's completed. We did a bid opening on March 6th and received these bids. In between that period, there was a bid meeting that Brad held with, I believe we had 17 participants. And as you'll see, we did have a good turnout on the bid. What we're doing today is asking for the concurrence and award of best bid and authorizing us to submit the grant by April 1st. And we're hoping to be able to begin this construction late in the summer of 2025. And for folks who are interested in our master plan, it's available at ottawaks.gov/airport. So these are the bids that we received. We had 4 bids. Amino Brothers was the best base bid and ad alternate and the overall lowest, obviously, and both are within the engineer's estimate. And based on these evaluations, compliance, which are generally outlined in the staff report for the federal and project requirements and cost competitiveness, it's recommended by staff and our project engineer to award the contract to Amino Brothers for a total of $3,380,483.25, contingent upon the FAA concurrence and, of course, receipt of grant offers. And an easy way to kind of understand what we're doing here is the blue phase is our base bid and what would be constructed irregardless of the grant award and supplemental funding, which are those phases outlined in the red and the green as phase 2 and phase 3. So this is to kind of help visualize blue being the base, with red and green being our ad alternates. And obviously, we appreciate Brad's work on this, and part of the reason why we've presented it in this way. If we're not successful in getting the full amount, we may be able to do, say, the green part, so we'd have the blue and the red, I'm sorry, and then know that in a future year we would need to complete the green. We're still cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to complete all 3 in one phase. This is, again, part of the local match. It does require that ad alternate to secure THUD funding or FAA look-back grant. If the appropriations are not awarded, we'll need to seek alternative funding sources, different phased approach, or consider amending scope, etc. The base bid has been outlined, full project cost was identified, and our local matching are also included. We did include a chart table from Brad regarding the funding composition for that. Do you have any questions at this point for what we're asking of you from Brad or I?
So make sure I understand, the base bid is the phase 1 where the turquoise colored taxiway is correct? Okay.
Correct. Yes.
And if only that one is approved, and that's the one that's the 1 point, what was it?
1,160,000.
We'll still get FAA help for 90% of that though, right?
95.
95. I like your number better.
Yeah, just Brad Waller Benish. Just to be clear and transparent, we've submitted everything's been good. We got good bids, everything since I've been last time. No real concerns or issues have popped up. We do have roughly $1 million in FA in the bank money, 100% guaranteed. We're asking for approval today. We're going to get the grant submitted by April 1. We'll by July 1, FAA and Congress will authorize the funds and give us the go letter. So what we're asking today is submit, so we can submit the grant, continue the process. Once we get that back, the go letter, authorize to sign, and only at that time will we sign any contracts with the contractor. So the city's not on the hook for paying 100%. By that time, we will know if we've got that extra additional FUD funding or not, and we will sign the contract appropriately, and then utilize our contract appropriately also. So if it doesn't go, it's about a $1.2 million project. It'll be in 3 grants with FAA, 2 this year and 1 for next year. And if we do get that funding, it'll be 4 grants because that extra FUD grant will be there. So we've kind of tried to structure it appropriately. We just have not heard yet on the FUD funding.
I know you've been doing this a long time, Brad, so are you familiar with the Amino Brothers? I assume they do good work?
Yep, we've worked with them in the past. I did call them, talk to them. They've done FA work. I have no reason to throw them out. I consider them responsible and responsive bidders, so.
Any other questions?
No, that's funny. I had almost the same exact questions that Commissioner Skidmore had. But yes, Brad has worked with us for a long time, and thank you for continuing to help the city of Ottawa move our airport forward. And my question was about Amino Brothers. So,
Brad, do you have any concern with the uncertainty with the federal government right now with the grants and everything like that about moving forward?
We do a little bit, and in fact, we did. Usually we hold bids valid for 90 days so that the city has that much time to evaluate and execute the contract, which we want to wait until FAA concurs on this to do that. Based on guidance from FAA received right before the bid that week of, or maybe a little right a week at, we extended to 120 days so that it passes per FAA, or for FAA's guidance, they wanted us to get past July 1. I believe we're at July 5th now with that 120 days. You're right. There's that concern there also. In 20 years of doing this, or however long it's been, once we've gotten to this point, we've never not received a grant, but we do protect ourselves in the city to make sure that we're not getting out over our skis, to make sure that you're not committed to something that wouldn't be funded. So I have no reason to believe that the first $1 million on that first phase or the base bid will go without an issue. Again, I can't say on the THUD yet. Last year, it was like April 4th, I think, is when they announced the THUD funding. And everything I'm hearing is we're involved and politicians do what they do up there, and we'll find out.
Just we just got back from DC last week, and that was the number one thing that they talked about was the uncertainty of the federal government and all the grants. So seeing this, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, and I would say if for some reason it all falls through, I mean with this whole thing, I wasn't prepared to answer this way, but we would not award the Amino Brothers, so there would be nothing there. The Benish contract for construction administration and closeout would not be there. The only thing the city would quote unquote be out would be the bidding numbers, and I forget what that cost. Like, no, I don't think it was that. I was thinking it was less than that. It was like 10,000. I was thinking 10 to 12,000. But regardless, it's a minimal exposure, I guess. If it does, worst comes to worst.
Well, hopefully it's something we don't have to worry about.
Hopefully,
just move forward. So, thank you.
And just to piggyback on Commissioner Crowley's comment, maybe we should wait till the check clears before we say green light on this. But the other question I had was about the disadvantaged business enterprise at 6.7%. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Well, as part of the federal contract and obligations for the airport, you're required to have a disadvantaged business enterprise goal with your project as part of the receipt of federal funding. We worked with the city. I do it with a lot of our other clients, and establish it's a 3-year goal, and it's basically based upon the amount of DBE contractors in the area, and it's very kind of loosey-goosey of how it's termed, but DBE contractors are certified through KDOT. They can submit through that, similar to like a 501c3 with the IRS or something. It's kind of a formality. But then they get a certificate that says they are a DBE, which is typically minority-owned, female-owned, military, veteran-owned. And basically, there's a certain percentage of those companies out there that can do the work. We divide that by the number of total firms out there that could do the work within a certain radius and get the goal. And I forgot off the top of my head what it was, 4%, 5%.
6.7.
6.7 on this one. So they have met the goal. They are planning to use a couple different firms. One is a pavement marking and traffic control firm out of Wichita, and one is a seeding firm out of Southeast Kansas, do seeding and erosion control. But it is a requirement that they meet that requirement as part of their bids.
City Manager Silcott, could you kind of clarify, there's something about matching for 190,000, there's the 142,000. Can you kind of like lock down what potentially the city's portion will be remaining?
Yes, we're looking at a total of roughly,
That's what I was trying to. Basically, the total.
with the look back
Yeah.
and just off of the base alone, we're looking at
55,000.
55.
Yeah. So if we do not get THUD funding, it's about 55 to 60,000. Basically, it's a $1.2 million project, roughly, with 5%. If we do get the project, the addition that bumps it by 2.5 million, which is an additional 5% of that, so 100,000. So that's where your total, wherever it went, of 100 and max is 190. Yes.
Thank you.
But is that plus the contract we have with Benish?
Yeah, the
Or is that
design,
included?
Contingent.
it's included.
Okay.
It's
okay.
included. That's all told.
Okay.
The design contract is part of a previous grant that you've already paid 5% on.
20, we did that in August.
Okay, thank you.
It is included.
With, KDOT.
Any other questions?
I guess just to refresh everybody's memory from times you were here, I think last summer, you're talking about the taxiway and the condition it's in and the need for replacement, and how old it is. Can you address those things? If you recall.
Yeah, I don't recall the age of it, but Canada Aviation does PCI analysis, so pavement condition index studies every 3 years. So there is a history of the degradation of the pavement, just like all pavement grades over time. We had hoped, I think roughly in I'm going to get my dates wrong, 2018 to 2020, somewhere in there, we were hoping to do a rehab type project, crack seal, pavement panel, pavement replacement, and it deteriorated pretty rapidly from there. And which is why we got to this point where we're looking.
And the pavement, I've learned from Brad, the pavement composition standards are higher than, say, even for like an interstate roadway that KDOT would have.
Any other questions?
Are there any time restraints or not maybe necessities that we need to address this today?
No, I mean we're going to coordinate around the fly-in and make sure that it's open at all times. The only really closure, quote unquote, that'll happen is to Dobson on the south side of the airport. They're going to lose access, and we're going to coordinate with them. But the primary terminal apron will always have access one way or another as a double entry. Again, start construction probably the fall of this year, and it'll depend if we do phase 1 or phase 2 and 3. Each one's a couple months approximately long, so there's a chance it could be done by the end of this calendar year. We only do phase 1, but if we do the whole project, it will either start next spring or at least delay a winter shutdown. So it'll probably be done, again, a year to 16 months from now. Again, it may be done in 6 months. Again, we're just going to have to wait and see. Maybe not 7 or 8 months.
And with the work occurring on the south end of runway,
And it's temporary loss of access. It's not.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's not permanent
That's
loss.
correct. Yep.
How would we like to proceed?
we got a motion laid out here.
In generalities, it's just considering the bids, which we recommend to accept, and then for City Manager Silcott to sign the grant application that's due April 1, and then assuming everything goes, when we come back in 2 months, 3 months, instead of coming back here and doing it, just we're ready to sign contracts and move forward, assuming however we get the money.
I'll make the motion that we approve item 11A, B, and C on our agenda.
I'll second that.
I'm not reading them.
I know. I was waiting for who was going to read it.
Do we have any further discussion? May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley,
Yes.
and Mayor Allen.
Yes, the motion carries. We'll mark off 11A here. That'll move us on to item 11D.
Resolution establishing cemetery rates.
Consideration of a resolution adjusting cemetery rates to ensure sustainable maintenance and operations of city-owned cemetery facilities, and this will be presented by Director Welsh.
Good morning, Mayor and Commission. Welcome back. Hope everybody enjoyed their trip. So what you've got in front of you today that I'm going to present to you is the recommendation to update our resolution regarding our cemetery fees. This presentation that I've put together was part of a curriculum that in the class that I attended last year for the Certified Public Manager. So with that being said, I just want to let you know as we go through this, there are no 2024 numbers in this presentation, but I do have those numbers here. If you guys are interested in knowing what they are, I can definitely I can fill you in on that. Just know that they are very similar on average over the period of years that we're addressing. So what we'll talk about, what I'll cover in this presentation is what currently are the services that we're charging for? What do those look like? How many services each year take place in our cemeteries? What are the individual tasks broken down? And how it is that staff can determine what these expenses per service are. How much revenue and expense do we come across each year? And then an added slide to show how we compare with some of our surrounding communities and cities of similar size. And then the recommendation at the end on how do we address the issue. So this slide kind of gives you a general observation of what the services are that we're talking about. The administrative side would be our cemetery sexton meeting with families when they come out to purchase a cemetery plot, or if they need to set up a funeral service. They would also be dealing with funeral homes for those type of situations. Locating grave spaces, and then doing any type of data entry that might need to take place at that time. The data entry is going to be anything from logging people as they come into the cemetery, and that would also be filling out deed paperwork or any type of transfer of deed, you know, if somebody sells a plot to someone else. The grave opening and closing kind of speak for themselves, but as you'll see in one of the other slides, the tasks that go with different types of grave or cemetery services, it requires a little more or a little less depending on what the service is. And then the grave tamping would be kind of the same situation. It just depends on what the service is. So this chart here, kind of like what I explained, it's got 5 years from 2019 to 23. It doesn't have 24's numbers, but they are very, very similar to this. But it shows the number of spaces that are sold each year. It shows the traditional burial cost, and what I've done on these were broken down from the traditional burial costs on the services that we do during our regularly scheduled staff time, so from 7 to 3:30, and then any of the burials that go beyond that 3:30 time, that would be the one that's marked there as the weekday overtime, and then the traditional burials on the weekend, we've also separated those just so that way we can get some actual numbers for those. The cremations I've done on that separate, on the bottom portion of that, you can see the exact same way. And then I've also included our the area that we call Babyland within the cemetery. So in total, you can see the total funerals at the bottom there. We average somewhere probably between 90 and 100 funerals a year. This would be for all of our cemeteries, not just one. So this one here, it describes what the tasks are for each one of the services that we have. So on the left side, you can see we've got cremations and traditional burials, and then they're separated out across the top throughout the graph there. All of the services, the tasks that we do are labeled the same, but the requirements for each service are going to be a little bit different. So one of the main things that we should focus on when we're looking at the traditional versus the cremation is the amount of hours that are put into it. So on the traditional burials, you can see kind of at the bottom right in the middle of the screen there on totals, it takes about 11 hours per traditional burial. And then at the bottom, the cremation, it's about 7 hours. So traditional burials take a little more. This graph represents our compensation for the individuals who would be responsible for doing these services. And then at the bottom, it shows what the charges for each piece of equipment that may be used within the cemetery. So that's where these numbers come from when we look at the following. This is the numbers, the revenue that from the services that we've, or the revenue that we've taken in on each one of these services for those past 5 years. As you can see, our current fees that are represented here, the spaces sold, we charge $300 for each space. The traditional burials, we charge $300 for that on top of that space sold. And then we have a $100 increase for any type of overtime, and currently we still have a $100 increase for any type of overtime that happens on the weekend. So the cremations are significantly less, but they also require significantly less, so it just makes sense to do it that way. So $175 is the current fee that we are charging, and it still shows the represented $100 increase for overtime and weekend fee. And currently we have a $150 charge in the unfortunate event that someone needs to use the baby land. These are the expenses that we've seen over the past 5 years. The service cost I've got broken down over to the left based on all of the numbers that you'd seen before. On average, these are what each one of these services costs. So you can see that the traditional burials cost significantly more than what the cremations do. But on average, these are the numbers that we're looking at when we're talking about expense. This shows a number of the surrounding communities and what they charge for each one of these services. In the majority of cases, Ottawa is the cheapest as far as cemetery service fees. On the average, you can see we are significantly less, based on just the averages of these 9 or 10 communities surrounding us. And this slide represents what we would recommend as a potential solution moving forward. Updating the current fees for spaces sold from a $300 charge to a $400 charge. That same $100 increase on your traditional burials, and then if we were to update that $100 increase, still keep the same $100 increase on the services that were happening during weekday overtime, with a difference being on the weekend having an extra fee added on top of that, just because there is additional fee that we pay our staff to come in and work on the week. The cremation services, as we've talked about before, are significantly less in cost for us, so it's a very minimal update proposal. So a $25 increase to $200, still keeping that same $100 overtime fee and the extra $100 on the weekend. And then the proposal from staff would be to just eliminate the cost of the $150 charge in Babyland. So one thing before we get into questions that I also want to make note of is in the resolution, one of the recommendations was to update one other fee. Currently, the way that we have it structured is with the $175 fee for cremations. If, let's say that one person in the family was cremated and then they didn't bury that person at the time, and then later there was another person cremated and they wanted to bury them both together in the same hole, the way that it is structured currently is we would charge them $175 a piece. Because we don't have to do all of the extra labor, it is requested that we cut that number in half. So just charging essentially for the administrative fees as opposed to the labor fee on top of that. So that's represented in the resolution on the opening and closing of a single grave for 2 cremated remains. So instead of it being $400, it would only be the $300. So with that, I would stand for any questions that you may have.
When was the last time that these fees were addressed? Was it back in 2007 with the resolution?
2007 was the last
Okay.
time that they were updated, yes.
Well, Director Welch, I'll say that we've never seen this kind of detailed information, so thank you for bringing this to our attention. I agree with the idea of waiving the fee on the baby line. I don't think anyone who goes through that should have extra burden of having to pay for a site. I think the taxpayers in Ottawa would well agree with that, waiving that. The other thing I appreciate too is the fact that we are losing money. I mean, it's not like we want to make money on this, but if we can at least break even, I think is important. And I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. That looks like those numbers, projection look a lot better than they were in the past. So thank you for that.
Director Welsh, this is actually a realm that I work in on a daily basis. And so I do have a few questions. Are we receiving the payment from funeral homes or from individuals?
It depends on how the individual wants to go about obtaining the service. So we do it both ways. So with our local funeral homes, if the family just wants to work directly with them, we will allow the payment to come directly from our local funeral homes. If it's not one of our local funeral homes, then the payment would have to come directly from the family. But if someone local decided that they did not want to work with one of our local funeral homes, or if they didn't want to go through that process with them, they could make payment directly to us as well. So we do it both ways.
Okay, so my concern is that when we, and I agree, I think that we need to right-size our fees. However, oftentimes, because again, I deal with this on a daily basis, these fees are all rolled into one, and it's one when individuals are at end of life and families are making decisions at end of life, and it's rolled into an all one inclusive package. And my concern is are there other fees that are in there in the current package that maybe aren't reflected? I don't want that information to be erroneously given to families, that the city charges this and that we're not actually charging that. And that is of concern to me, because oftentimes the city, in many different avenues, is the entity that is blamed for costs being so high. And so it concerns me that if we make a change, and I'm, again, fine with making that change, that the city not be the ones that the change is actually reflected in what the funeral homes are charging. And we are only in control of what we know, and we can't control on how that messaging happens. However, just want to be very careful about our citizens knowing what our fees are, and that funeral homes can choose whatever to charge whatever they want.
You're absolutely right, and I thought that's where you were going with
Yeah.
it. And we have no control on what private
Right.
business charges for their service. But yes, being as transparent as possible is what we can with what our fees are. So our fees are going to be the same for every funeral home that comes into our and obtains our services. They're going to be the same whether it's through any funeral home or if it's just an individual coming in for service. Cremations are not required by law to go through for burial, to go through any type of funeral director. So if a family comes in, they're going to be charged the same. Yes.
So, oh, sorry. Yes.
Well, tag along with that, people can buy their own sites today, right? They don't have to go through the funeral homes. Make sure
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
make sure that's clear. Okay,
Absolutely.
Along the same lines, I have been at, and I actually think that the individuals who work in our cemeteries, it is a very sensitive time for individuals, and we have to be extremely sensitive about how those customers, if we want to call them customers, approach us. I've often been concerned about this is absolutely has nothing to do with our staff. I think they do a great job with what they have. I don't think that we present very well at our cemetery. When you walk in, it's not necessarily a really warm and comforting place to come into. It's an office. I've often thought that we need to probably look at the way that we present ourselves in that office. I don't know how many commissioners have actually been into the cemetery office, but if you're coming in there in a time of crisis or and obviously a time of loss, it's not an extremely comforting place to be. And so I wish that we would look at maybe updating that office and making it more warm.
We'll take that into consideration, Commissioner. Thank you for that.
And more warm and more welcoming to those that are in a time of crisis.
Thank you for that.
And DJ, thank you for the presentation. And as Commissioner Skidmore said, all the information. I was kind of just looking on the city website, imagining I'm someone trying to find these fees kind of currently, also in the future. Do you know do we have this on the website somewhere? Is there a way if I'm looking to buy a plot and trying to get information on that?
At this point, currently, I don't think that that information is on the website.
Okay.
The website's one of the things that we have been working to update as we're moving forward. So this type of information is very easily to be able to put on there, and so everybody can access.
Yeah, kind of following the cost, perspective. That do people have to just essentially call us if they have a question? They're being charged a fee by a third party. They would have to essentially call and say, "What is your fee?" At this point,
If they felt that the fees were unreasonable, I would make the suggestion just to call and find out for sure what our fees are. With the suggestion that you've just made, I think that if we were to update the website, that would be probably number one. But our staff at the cemetery, they are very well rounded, and they understand these fees and would be able to explain them very, very quickly and easily. So they can always reach out.
Director Welsh, can you go back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Can you tell me the justification between the traditional burial weekday overtime and weekend, and then the same thing with the cremation? There's $100 more on the weekend instead of the weekday overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the service is going to be the same on the weekday and the weekend, with the difference being the way that it is structured, our staff gets paid an extra fee to be able to come in on the weekend. So it's not just that they're being paid overtime that they're already working, but they're being paid an extra fee to come in on the weekend. So this $100 offset is going to help balance that.
Okay. I just didn't see that on the slide. A couple ones before where you were talking about like hourly and things like that. I didn't see that in there. So I was trying to figure out the justification.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
question.
Any other questions? Would we like to?
I'll just say I've been fortunate to never need to know what these fees are. Or kind of even the process of going about this, and with the digging of a hole and all of that, I think these costs are pretty reasonable for having people on time. And as you kind of spelled out the amount of time that truly goes into that from our perspective. So with that, I'll make the motion to approve item 11D as listed on the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
I was going to ask legal counsel if I should recuse myself. As I look upon the dais here, I may be the soonest customer, but I guess I can still vote, so I'll go with that.
May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Allen?
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
As a point of clarification, when is there a date that we had that these would go into effect?
They would go in effect as of the passing of the resolution. So
Okay, thank you.
immediately.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 11E.
Award of nuisance mowing bid.
This is a recommendation to approve a bid award for nuisance mowing services, ensuring the timely and cost-effective maintenance of properties in violation of city codes regarding overgrown vegetation. We will have Director Neese present.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Glad to be before you with this, and I want to start by saying, so the presentation is mine. Any weaknesses in it are mine. The property improvement partner, Colson Bean, did all the background work and really worked hard to get responses to the RFP, and I'm extremely proud of the work that he did and thankful for that. So it is recommended that you consider awarding the 2025 nuisance mowing contract to KB's Lawn Care LLC of Olathe. We have in code definitions of what kinds of weeds or grass would result in possible abatement. We do start with a courtesy letter. I think Colson has done a very good job of strengthening that process and making sure that we communicate clearly. I'd like to believe that that is part of what has happened between 22, 23, where we had 19 lawns or 19 parcels, 10 parcels, and then 2024 with 3 parcels. There may be other factors, but I'd like to think that our courtesy letter process may have helped. In 23 and 24, we had a really hard time getting mowers. I know that in 24 we had, by the time you say, are you insured and willing to be insured to work with the city, we were down to 1 response. And then when it came time to actually go out and mow, they were non-responsive. And so last summer, Colson ended up doing the mowing. I would also like to be clear that of those lawns, lawn isn't the correct description at all. You're talking about brush. You're talking about I know in one situation glass bottles strewn in a yard, and so it is difficult work. So the RFP was published January 8th. Responses were due February 14th. Colson did follow up just to make sure that they were registered with the state, that they had insurance, checking on references, and that really came down to the recommendation, which is KB's Lawn Care of Olathe. There were 3 other responses, and that was in the packet. KB's has been in business the longest with the state, since 2013 versus 22 or 24 for the other 2 that are registered. And KB's has customers in town, Victory Dodge and Bank Midwest. In terms of financial considerations, it is ultimately charged to the property owner after abatement. That does sit. If it doesn't get paid, it's out on a lien, and so obviously there's some time it can sit there, but ultimately it gets paid. And then the draft agreement that's attached has been reviewed by City Attorney Finch. So the recommended action would be awarding the nuisance mowing bid to KB's Lawn Care LLC and authorizing Director Neese to sign the service agreement, or to refer it to a future meeting if there's discussion that needs to take place, or if you have follow-up questions that I can't answer today. But happy to answer any questions I can.
Director Neese, I was surprised that just 3 parcels needed mowing last year. Did some go unmowed? I mean, in the years past, we've had double-digit numbers. But
so it's certainly possible that some went unmowed. I think so that would be a negative factor, right? Yeah. I think there may be some positive factors. I'd like to think that our courtesy letter process was improved this last year. I'd also like to think that perhaps some of the work that's been done to take vacant parcels and build houses on them may have helped. But so I think there might be some positive factors. There probably are some negative factors too.
Thanks.
Director Neese, on that, with that letter, you said that likely dropped the number. Is there information on that? Say someone is physically unable to mow their yard and they don't want the city to do it. Is there ways kind of in that they give them resources to either maybe reach out to churches, groups, or something to kind of help fill that gap between us doing it for them and them being unable potentially to do it?
So I appreciate the question, Commissioner, and I should have looked at the letter this morning. As I remember it, we ask for folks who are unable to reach out to us, so that we can make that handoff. And we've worked hard to cultivate relationships, particularly with the Ottawa Ministerial Alliance. And I don't believe that we had folks take advantage of that. But we are very aware of, we talk about it in terms of, we've got folks who can't mow, theoretically can't mow, and folks who won't mow. And we're very eager to help connect people who can't mow to resources.
Thank you. And I think, looking at the prices, having done mowing for a decade plus, like you had mentioned, there's a lot of things unknown when the grass is a foot tall.
Yep.
Things that you hit and the damage to zero-turn mowers that a lot of times these fees don't even truly cover if you hit something that is unknown kind of in that. And then as well as the safety for the surrounding cars, neighbors, kids, structures. I think those prices are very fair price for what they're often mowing.
And it's all, if I may, it's also as needed, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of predictability to build into their planning. So I think that is a factor as well.
Any other questions? Would we like to proceed?
Well, having experiences, Commissioner Clayton said about mowing, I had two brothers. We call ourselves the Skid Mow Brothers. So we've done a lot of mowing around town. Believe me, I know it's hard work, but it's got to be done. We can't ignore it. And so with that said, I will make the motion we approve item 11E on our agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
Well, I just wonder if we could maybe change this for the future years to call it the skid mow action. I mean, possibly.
You could mow them now.
Oh, no, I'm not mowing anymore. I've served my time.
It will not change the outcome of my vote, whether we do or do not change it to the skid mow action.
May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 11F.
Amendment to electric rate resolution.
The proposed resolution adopting electric utility rates replaces Resolution 1928-23 adopted in January of 2023 and reflects the updated rates schedule and revised annual review provision. And this will be presented by Director Landis.
Thank you. While my name is on the agenda, we actually have our utility management crew here, as well as Brianna Snyder in my department, who does a lot of the financial analysis work on our electric fund as well. So any questions that you have, we should between us be able to answer. This resolution was adopted, the current existing resolution was adopted at the top of 2023. And the work to put that together was done in the few months leading up to the end of 2022. And I don't know if you remember, we spent several study session times working around the table on all three of our utilities and trying to determine the best route to take on being able to accomplish future improvements for each of our utilities. So the reason that we're bringing this back to you today is because while that was an intended annual increase for the electric fund, that increase did not take place in 2024. And the way that our resolution is written, it specifically spells out under each classification the amount that it's going to be for each of the years. And so it's tied to a year. So because we didn't do an increase in 2024, we needed to adjust that timetable so that it's accurate. Just to go back as a reminder, the reason that we brought the electric rates to you in the first place is because, and we've discussed this with all of our utilities before, anytime that you need to put in a increase into place for any utility rates, it's best to do it in small incremental increases. And the purpose for that is so that you don't have to come back with a 10%, 20%, or much higher increase in any one given year, but you spread that out over time. It also helps with your planning for your future capital projects, remembering that you're not going to accumulate all of the cash that you need for a $10 million project in 1 year's worth of rates. Regular usage or any type of increase that is attached to that usage. So we try to do our planning on a 5 or 10 year basis, looking ahead to some of those projects. Listed here are a couple of the projects that we had initially talked about when we went to put that in the new rate resolution in place. And just to give you an idea of some of the cost for some of the projects, the river crossing for the circuit 8 to 10, structure rebuild is somewhere around 1.5 million, just in construction alone without the design. The design alone for the conversion project is somewhere around 500,000, or at least that's what's budgeted. The project itself, while we thought it might be somewhere around the $5 million mark because it's not designed yet, it actually is probably going to be somewhere around the $8 to $10 million mark. Those are significant numbers. And without adding them all up, those are definitely projects that we have to be planning ahead for, being able to either make a payment towards debt financing for those projects or being able to pay cash for some of the amounts like a study or a design for some of these projects. Even if you were to have some sort of a grant come in, you still have to have the match available for a grant to be able to move ahead to for the construction of a project. And oftentimes a design or a study is required to know what that project cost is so that you can even apply for the grant. So these are a few of the things that were listed in here: the river crossing, the system conversion, the K68 bridge lighting, downtown street lighting, some of our SCADA system upgrades, which have been completed already, and then future backup power generation for the Northeast and Southeast substations. In 2024, like I said, the 6% planned increase did not take place. There's a variety of reasons for that, some of which we had talked to you about coming to you in the fall of each year to talk about upcoming rates or increases or a review of each utility. That didn't occur at the end of 2023. Instead, we had a lengthy discussion with you about all utilities during the budget year. And then as we got towards the end of the year, there is written into the current resolution that we have to bring to you a presentation to talk about this 60 days in advance of even doing a rate increase. As time progressed, the rate increase didn't make sense to put in place at that time, and we determined that we would bring this back to you at the top of the year. We've had other discussions internally, of course, about what the right time of the year is to actually put an increase into place as it pertains to the electric utility. So the best option is probably the fall time, when the highest usage is not necessarily taking place for our customers. We had originally in each of our utility resolutions anytime after March 1. And so right now, for example, we've brought to you and talked about the increases for water and sewer will take place on April 1. So they do vary from time to time. Largely, when do we have we had the time available to let people know that rate increase is coming? We want to make sure that we have given them the heads up. So in this case, these two comparison tables just show you essentially that the original resolution was intended to be in place from 23 to 27. With a 6% increase annually, and what's proposed on the right, it just reflects that the 2024 there was no change, and so those rates stayed the same in 24 as they were in 23, and that the 6% then just gets applied, and so it essentially extends it one more year under this proposed resolution, but it's what was intended originally, and so that's how it's designed. We wanted to put together for you as a reminder some of what this increase might look like for some of our customers. Keep in mind that every customer is different, and so to even come up with an average usage for you is very difficult, because even as you talk about small business or large power customers, their average usage can range. It's a variety and a very large range, and so being able to give you an example was a little tough. But for an average residential customer that might be around 1,000 kilowatt hours, the increase per month will be around $12.20. For some of our small business, somewhere around $15 per month, and our large business averaging somewhere around $162 per month. We did list for you here the types of businesses that fall into these. Instead of listing business names, we tried to come up with an average customer that might fall into a range of a small business using 2,500, 5,000, or a large business using 25,000 kilowatt hours. So in everything from your office spaces to your gas stations and convenience stores. This is a comparison of the rates, and I know there's a lot of numbers on this screen. I think the most important line on this page is where Ottawa falls. We did receive just in the last week the most updated KMEA survey that they put out to their electric utilities. And so at their request, we did not list the cities on the left. And so they are labeled by A, B, C, D. And of course, we've spelled out Ottawa for you. But what we did is we went through and we picked some similar and some smaller. And you'll see that in that population column right there. The one that's listed without a population is a non-city provider. There's a wide range.
What does that mean, a non-city provider?
A large electric utility that is not it's not a city utility.
Okay. Thank you for being as vague as you can, but we got it.
You're welcome. But some of these are generating utilities and some of them are not. And so there is a wide range here on what their costs are and how they're able to charge their customers. There was more detail here, and as we talked about, how much detail do we show you here and what might be helpful to our customers watching. And the way to understand is in our rate structure, we all have built in a base rate and a per unit or usage rate. And that does vary depending upon the size of your utility and the number of customers that you serve. So your fixed revenue is coming in off of your base charge and your variable revenue is coming in off of your usage charge. So you might have a larger base charge for some of your small utilities and a smaller base charge for some of your larger utilities, but it's really just basically based on how they are bringing in as much revenue as they need to be able to make the capital improvements to their utility. And that's how ours is structured as well. When we're thinking about this, we know that these, it is one of those times when everything seems to be going up, and we wanted to basically recenter the conversation around electric is one of the things that your usage is something you can help to control in your own home. And so we found a couple of energy tips and tricks just for saving energy itself and saving some cost in your energy usage. One of those is just using natural light, turning off the lights in your home, and you could save up to $90 per year. Now, I want to caveat this by saying some of these numbers are based on, let's say, an average cost of 12 cents. Is that right? 12 cents. I think ours averages just over 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Is that right? Okay. And so our numbers might be a little different than just slightly different than these, but these are some of the things that you can do to help yourself. Reducing your water heater temperature can help you save up to about $10. Setting your thermostat higher in the summer, of course. Using fans, turning off your lights, of course. The type of light bulbs that you use definitely makes a difference. And as we talked about, the financial impact of having this resolution in place is because we have capital improvement needs. They're not just ongoing maintenance needs. Some of them are large capital improvements that need to happen for the sustainability of our electric utility. And so having these increases in place is certainly something that's going to help us move in that direction to get those projects done. There aren't any real legal considerations in this other than the city attorney did review the resolution that's in front of you, and our recommendation would be to approve the resolution that's been presented. And we are all here for your questions.
Director Landis, can you go back a few slides? I think it was their first one you showed, that one. So if you look at the residential 1,000 kilowatts per hour, obviously the customer impact is more than 6%. So are there additional fees in there?
So the 6% is based on isn't as structured as up to a certain amount first. Okay. It's a tiered structure on how it's charged, so it won't be a flat 6% across the board. So up to a certain amount is an amount, and then beyond that is so much per kilowatt. Is that right? Correct? Okay.
I know it may seem like, you know, we probably talked about this when we initially had the discussion. It may seem like a significant amount over 5 years of 30%, but I believe I just saw a certain individual that's providing electricity proposed 25% to their customers just for this year.
One time.
One time, yes. So I'm assuming that in the next couple of years that rate may go up for them also. So nobody likes raising the rates. We all pay them, but it's just something we have to do in order to, like you say, continue to have a useful electric service.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to reconcile, because I know when we first enacted this back in, what was it, 2023, inflation at that time was hovering right around 6 to 10%. Now it's about 3 or 3 plus. So we need to be able to justify to our customers why a 10% basically ends up being a 10% raise on these 2 residential examples you're showing there. I spoke with Ed Thompson just yesterday. In fact, he's at my house putting my new meter in, and we were talking about material costs. And it seems like inflation has affected our electric department on materials, maybe more so than eggs or milk or chicken or anything else. What do you suggest we can tell the folks about this 10% raise if we pass this?
As just to clarify your question, what can we tell them about why these increases are important?
Right.
Okay. So I might circle around to something that we didn't necessarily talk about specifically today. The street lights that are in town are on a replacement schedule that's been delayed for many, many years. For example, I believe 11 out of, and I might get this wrong, 14 or whatever that number is, need to be replaced. One replacement is about $575,000, and that was the estimate last year. So as you think about those costs of just maintaining the infrastructure that we have, and that's not just your poles and the generating facilities and the substations and all of the things that are related here. The costs for all of that have gone up. We've talked about this during our budget process, even for this current year, and it's changed even more beyond that. So those materials that are needed and used in order to even make general maintenance replacements have gone up significantly. I don't have the exact numbers for a particular material. Maybe these guys have a little bit better example that we can use there. But in a utility scenario, the improvements or just simple maintenance, they are not small costs. I can't think of any one thing that we've had to do in a maintenance setting recently that has been a very small number that's easy to accomplish.
Well, I suppose if we, I don't know, this is a hard question to answer, I'm sure, but I suppose we do have some reserves in our electric fund. I know with interest rates have been good. Electric fund has benefited from improved interest rates over the years, and so there's some reserves set aside if needed. And I know we really don't want to dip into that unless we have to. And it looks like to your report then with the other cities, that if you go back to that slide showing the
Certainly.
comparison to other cities.
Sure.
There. So that one, like that residential bill for Ottawa would be 138. Is that with the new increase reflected in that price, or is that today?
No, I don't know when KMEA pulled these
Okay.
numbers. 23. But that wouldn't match what we have here. So I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. And I also didn't produce any of their calculations. So if they're off slightly, I wouldn't use this screen as a representation of exactness.
Okay, but and give me just a second, but if we were to add 6% to that, that makes it 146, which still doesn't move us in that chart. To the residential bill. It doesn't move
It
us
still
anywhere in that
stays.
chart. We're still in the same space.
As long as the other cities, yeah, thing, I guess. But my point there is, I mean, with these numbers here, it tells me we're kind of in the middle of the mix. I'm not sure how the cities were selected. I see a lot of different population ranges there. But at the same time, to show people we're in the middle of the mix, we're not at the high end of the quadrant.
There was about 68 cities represented on that survey, and so, or
And in the aggregate, both generating and non-generating, so meaning those
Yes.
cities that generate versus those that only have distribution, we're in the middle, period.
That's good.
Director Landis, do you have, with this, I know when we looked at this originally, you showed basically like that to 28 plan on what the deficit would potentially look like if we didn't do this, when we kind of approved this and at the end of 22 or early 23. Do you have basically kind of that like snapshot that kind of shows like if we don't do this?
I don't
what
have that here for
potentially
you
looks
today. And the reason for that is we aren't proposing anything different than you've already approved. And I know that doesn't help in the conversation of where are we today. Costs haven't gone down. The cost of the proposed projects have not decreased. They've only increased. And the same stays true that we presented to you 2 years ago. And so that 5-year, 10-year outlook without an increase, you won't be able to accomplish those projects. And to Commissioner Skidmore's point, there is some reserve in a capital improvement fund. If you consider that a portion of that was scheduled to be used for the AMI meter purchase to finish out that project, and then the one replacement of the 15th and Main traffic light construction project is also slated at 575 out of there. So it will diminish quickly with just the few things that we have in the most near future CIP.
In our proposed resolution, I do like the idea that we're after or on or after March 1. And that's what I'm kind of wondering. I think maybe you alluded to it there, but we just had our water increase here starting April. We can push this off 6 months into the fall to start. Got consensus up here to do that, but not all get it all at once. Will that affect your numbers that much going forward by waiting 6 months? Rate increase.
This is a shot in the dark. I want to say that it might be around a 6-month generation might be around 250,000. Maybe close. Somewhere around 250,000 for a delay of 6 months in revenue generation.
And I think we also need to remember that if we do that, and I mean, I pay electric rates just like everybody else does here. But if we do that, that does mean that we also have it that we have it set that for the next year, it's going to come forward to the next commission, and there will be an increase requested. And so if we wait 6 more months, you're going to hear this
Yeah.
90
So,
days later.
To your point, these resolutions are 5-year resolutions. So the idea would be that once it's back in place, we wouldn't bring it back to you for another rate increase. But you will have conversations, of course, throughout our budget process and anytime we do a business plan review with you, where we talk about this and what that impact is and if there's any adjustments needed beyond that. But once the resolution itself is in place, we wouldn't necessarily be coming back to ask for a new increase each year. It would already be set under that resolution. But the reason we had to bring this back to you this time is because otherwise we wouldn't have been coming to you for approval other than the rate that the rates were structured in the resolution itself. There was a rate listed under 2024 that actually would be the rate that would be in place in 2025. So we had to make that adjustment within the resolution, and largely so your customers know exactly what that increase looks like.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be in favor of waiting 6 months. We had this discussion in 22, we eventually made the decision in January of 23 and expected a 6% increase every year for the next 5 years. And so did the customers. They kind of got a reprieve for no increase in 24. And at this point, we're just moving forward with what we agreed upon a couple years ago.
And when it says after, Who makes that decision?
Well, originally our idea was we would have done it on either March 1st or April 1st, whichever way you want to make sure that those customers have the customary 30-day notice at minimum. In this case, the next time that we would probably feel most comfortable putting it in place would be either June 1st, something around that timeline, or it would need to be pushed off to somewhere around October.
So May 1st, and I'm fine with June. I was like, we're 30-day notice, so
May 1st could be an option.
it
as
may
well.
be a crunch, but May 1st
Yes.
may be an option.
Yes.
Any other questions?
And we don't know if it'd be that way every year. I mean, could be March 1st.
I'll
Next
tell you that what we have proposed here, which is a rinse and repeat of what was approved just
Yeah.
prior to my arrival,
Right.
is the bare minimum. It doesn't account for any sort of depreciation, any sort of replacement costs, any sort of improving on an inventory for whether it's residential distribution or it's our commercial and industrial, where we know an average transformer starts at 250 with a 70-week lead time, sometimes 40, depending on what you might get. And we're not fully recapturing that, so we're just juggling the ball. So this is the bare minimum.
And I think, if I can, what Commissioner Skidmore may have been asking was, if we do it as May 1st this year, will it be May 1st next year? Was that kind of what you were asking? Will it be at the same time?
The way
each
it's
year
written,
going
I
forward?
think we would probably do them all at the same time, which would be March or April, March
The
1
same
or April
calendar.
1. The same in each calendar year,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
If we want to determine that there's a best time of year to do this, and we want to do that going forward, we can do that as well. I mean, we're open to hearing what you want to do with this, if you'd like those increases to be at separate timeframes, and then we'll make our forecast match that going forward.
I think it would be nice to have kind of a deadline, when that increase would go into effect, because if not, you have customers out there that are thinking, at least they know at that point of whether it's March, April, May, or whatever of next year, that increase is going to incur. So if not, they're kind of, some people, are barely making that payment to start off with, so they're trying to plan ahead. And if they know kind of an idea of when, then they can.
Certainly.
Well, in essence, really all we're asking you for to just extend it 1 year
Yeah.
today, right?
Yes.
To extend it to 2028. And that's just basically taking what was approved and shifting it over 1 year on the schedule, which was in the resolution.
How would we like to proceed?
I'll make the motion to approve item 11F on our agenda.
Do we have
Yeah,
a
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 11G.
Project updates.
This will be presented by City Manager Silcott.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, we will make this a high overview, as you've seen these every month. And this is an overview of our active capital improvement projects. They span various infrastructure improvements that address everything from water plant upgrades, electric meter replacements, and overall facility enhancements. The report outlines our progress and upcoming tasks, as well as progress, as I said, and our status and anticipated completion timelines. The Proximity Park Water Tower and water pump plant upgrade has a punch list for the water tower having been completed. Upcoming tasks include additional punch list items and delivery of our high-capacity pump at the water facility. And the tower project is, counting the pumps, is about 62% complete, and we expect completion for these projects in Q1 of 2026. Our water plant generator has had no recent activities, with the next step involving awaiting our electrical schematic for building the transfer switch into our facility, and the project is about 89.4% completed, and we anticipate completion in the fourth quarter of 2025. Our residential electric meter replacements, we had our meters arrive just in time for Valentine's Day on February 13th. Our installation is ongoing and in progress. The project was approved and ordered back in January 10th of 2024, and we hope for a third quarter 2025 completion date. Our three-phase AMI meter, this is our milestones that we've created to show kind of where we're expected to be for the residential installation. So you can tell that we're moving on, and we hope that will be completed here again in the fourth quarter. Or third quarter, I apologize. Our commercial meter replacements, we really haven't had any significant progress. It is underway, and we do plan on having it completed in the fourth quarter of this year, so we're about a third of the way complete for that. Our water treatment plant study will have presented to you within the next 3 meetings here, as it is complete, and we'll have that presented, as well as the engineers here to answer any detailed questions that you might have. Our Pin Oak sanitary sewer lift station, we've had one change order that occurred, and we anticipate completion here next month. The commission chamber tech upgrade, that is underway, and we hope to have construction underway. So we'll be in the adjacent room starting in May, with construction beginning on May 5th of 2025. And we're targeting an expected completion date within 60 to 90 days. Our HVAC is still progressing, and we have BG as our design consultant and project engineer, because it is a legacy system and is pretty much technology and HVAC anymore with the air handling. And so we'll have additional reports here very, very soon. Are there any questions for myself or our team on our projects?
Any questions?
I do have, we're looking at we're looking at 7 more weeks before we start working on the construction of the commission, and we're already 6 months behind on that.
Right, the subcontractor.
I understand the
Yes.
subcontractor, however, but that puts us 9-10 months behind.
Yes.
A contractor's been located?
Yes, and that has been secured, and that's why we now have that May 5th start date.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? We'll move on to comments by city manager.
We have some upcoming items, and as we move forward with next week's meeting, we'll have more slides, as April, May, and June looks to be full of activities at the OMA, but some of the highlights include the Elton John birthday on March 22nd, our Serbian cultural breakfast on March 26th, we have April 5th, the Jeremy McCombs Honky Tonk concert, and a Taste of Ireland on May 9th. We have citywide cleanup planned for April 4th and 5th, and we're still looking for volunteers at the golf course. Some highlights include our street crews have been diligent and out and about patching potholes. They did 680 over the previous week, and just this week alone, they filled 200, and you may have seen some rehabilitation on the southbound lanes between 10th and 12th on Cedar Street, which utilized 25 tons of asphalt for those 200 potholes and those rehabilitation patches that had occurred there. And our Parks Department has been out utilizing the playground grant for the mulch acquisition, as well as our annual programming for our operations budget to make sure that our mulch meets the playground safety standards for the fall capacity for our youngsters utilizing that facility or those facilities. So if you have any questions, myself or a member of the team. All right, with that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to comments by the governing body. We'll start with Commissioner Kaler.
None at this time.
Commissioner Crowley.
No comment.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Yeah, I would just like to change my vote on 11F to a yes. I realize, yes, we are just changing the date of extending it 1 year. The alternative is not, there's no alternative really to that, since we missed 2024 or 25. I'm sorry, 24. And I guess I would like to just say that the commissioner, sometime let's have a discussion on that. Going at 6%. I know I voted for that 2 years ago, but 6% every year. If inflation does drop down to 2%, and if there's not a necessity for a 6% increase, we can talk about it at the time. But that was my point. I just don't know if we should put down 6% every year. And if I understood the city manager say that can be adjusted downward, obviously, if we decide on any particular one, we have the authority, the power to change any of our ordinances. That would be something I'd look at. So I just want to make a statement that, yeah, going forward, we may want to look at that a little bit. And that's all I had.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton.
I just wanted to wish happy spring break to all of the USD 290 students. I know I saw a photo from ORC that the other day was packed. OMA had their free movie and it looked packed. And so there's a lot of great activities going on around town for kids to get out. Maybe play in the snow this afternoon. So great spring break activities. So just hope everyone has a great and safe spring break.
And I have no comment. We'll move on to announcements. On March 26th, 2025, we have a City Commission meeting at 4 p.m. here at City Hall. April 2nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. here at City Hall. And April 9th, 2025 at 4 p.m. here at City Hall. With no other business before us, I will adjourn.